Ladies, if you've ever found yourself saying, I know all of the things that I need to do, I just need to do it, then this episode is for you, because today we are going to talk about why fat loss is so much more of an emotional problem, an emotional issue, than it is anything else. And if you've started this year on a mission to drop body fat, or this is going to be the year that you completely transform and fat loss is a part of that, or binge restrict or all or nothing has always been your number one struggle, then we have to get to the crux of this, and we have to talk about the grey area that no one is talking about, because it's very shiny and it's very attractive to put you on a calorie deficit and tell you that these are the best exercises and talk about all of these foundational check boxes that we need to make sure that we, if you can follow this protocol, then the weight is going to drop off. But what happens when we find ourselves emotional or dysregulated and we revert right back to eating the way that we did in the first place? And from my findings as a coach, and just knowing myself through experience as a 42-year-old woman and the work that I've done, like I'm never not learning in this profession of mine because it's such a passion. Fat loss really is so much more of an emotional problem and an emotional dysregulation. And I've got to say, like, the older that we get, and if you've hit that sort of like bracket, 35, 36, like plus, we know that our hormones are starting to change, and we feel that in our emotions along the way. And so we know that, again, it becomes even more challenging to regulate and to manage our stress levels and to manage our temperament. And we do feel our bandwidth being more stretched than ever. And then we wonder why it feels so much harder to stick to the diet, and it feels so much harder to shift the body fat than it was before. And so I want to get into it because a lot of the women I know who are listening to this, a lot of the women that I work with, like we're high functioning women. We've got families, we've got houses to run, we've got careers, we've got businesses, we've got our own goals. We're trying to fit in, seeing our friends and showing up maybe for our own parents. And there's a lot going on, and we are consistently on, so to speak. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm doing that in inverted commas, like we are on all day long. And so a lot of what the struggle is with fat loss that I see is we get to the end of the evening, and that's when it is most challenging. But for a lot of women, that's when you actually just get the opportunity to relax and switch off. And so we'll lean into food to help us regulate, or to get back a little bit of control, or to get that dopamine fix, or even just to give us like a bit of a sense of relief. And I think it's really important, first of all, that we normalize this emotional load that we're carrying, because, and again, some of you listening to this might get the ick even hearing that out loud. Like, we do not want to accept that we're juggling a lot. We know that we are, but it's a given. And so it's become a standard for us, and it's become our normal. And that's great, by the way, because we have to normalize our own circumstances to a degree. But it's also really important that we still acknowledge that, and acknowledge that it is impacting our habits and our behaviours and our cravings and our hormonal response and our need to overeat, or just to seek this sense of like relief from somewhere in the day. I was thinking about this when I was in Centre Parks, actually. I was thinking about like, what's the big thing? These are the things that I think about when I'm walking on my own and the kids are going ahead on the scooters and I'm just walking in a world of my own, and I'm never not thinking about helping women thrive. Honestly, it's not even like a work obsession, it's an actual passion. And I was thinking, like, what do we need most? What do most women, first and foremost, before anything else, what do we need most? And I genuinely believe that the majority of women, if not all of us, we need to feel seen in order to be able to move forward and get to the other side. We have to be seen first and foremost. And what does that look like? So whenever I first start working with a client, especially inside of one-to-one, we will jump on a bit of a discovery call, and I will ask those deep questions that you might feel uncomfortable asking, but I will ask them. And like, obviously we might have got to know each other a little bit before this. Sometimes I am speaking to women who I've been speaking to back and forth on DM for the last 6 months, because a lot of the time the reason that you find yourself stuck is because there has been a lot going on, whether it's in a relationship or stress at work, or you've just generally been feeling down on yourself, and it's just created more of a spiral of overeating and neglecting yourself, and like you've just got yourself into this position where you don't recognize who you are anymore. And so that in itself causes more of the same behavior. And let me tell you this, like in the last couple of years, the conversations that I've had with one-to-one clients have been nothing short of just like, it's wild to me that we try to drop body fat without acknowledging that. Like, I've worked with women who've overcome cancer, who've lost children, who've lost babies, who've lost grown adult children, who have been in really bad toxic relationships, who struggle with loneliness, like they just feel really, really lonely. I've worked with women who are completely burnt out and overstretched at work, and they're in a position at work where it's so demanding and there's so much pressure being put on them that they feel that there's no escape other than obviously of a weekend. And it's really important when I say like we need to be seen. And some of you, I can't remember the guy's name. I want to say it's Gable or Gabriel. He's a psychologist anyway, and he believes in big T's and small T's, so big traumas and little traumas. And some women have really big traumas in life that they've gone through and got out to the other side, and some it's just small traumas, but it doesn't matter. We've all got a story is the important part. Okay, we've all got this story that we have to validate and understand that that's been part of our journey so far. Whether or not we want to use it as an excuse, because we hear this, don't we, all of the time on social media, like, no one cares, work harder, like, we can't live in the past, we can't use these things as excuses. No, we can't. Like, we're not going to use it as an excuse, but we absolutely have to validate our story up until this point and realise that, like, the reason I may have been struggling might be because X, Y, and Z. And so we need to be seen before we can truly transform. That is just my belief. Like, if we just keep on trying to reset every January and go back to following a diet and doing all of the things, and at no point do we have this conversation of like, you know what, like, I've really been struggling with this in my past, or I went through this in my past, and this is how I helped soothe myself at the time. A glass of wine at the weekend, a grab bag of crisps, binge eating, whatever it might have been, that just got me through that period in life. And now I can't break that cycle. Okay, that in itself is such an emotional load lifted. And like, once you've acknowledged that and once you've said that, and you need a safe space to say it, and this is why we've created Thriving Women. And again, to any new clients that have come into the community over the last couple of weeks, I have said, like, do not be shy to speak up about the things that matter to you. Maybe about some of the struggles, but also about the things that you are doing really well. Like, it's a really important piece that we also share the wins, because inside of this community, there is one thing that you can bank on. You are surrounded by other women who get it, because the only women that have come into this community are like-minded women. Like, I have only spoken about it on social media and on my podcast, and it's very clear what we're about inside of Thriving Women. So without announcing it in bold colours, if you've come inside of the community, I know that that's what you're about, and I know that you, on some level, you are like-minded to me and to the rest of the other women. And so feel safe to speak about the things that matter. I'm not saying you've got to go in with your big traumas and, you know, offload. It's not the space for that. That is one-to-one coaching. That is what working with a one-to-one coach will definitely help support you with. But it is a space to feel seen and acknowledged. And so I might be going off on a tangent a little there, but that was my train of thought when I was in Centre Parks. It's like, we need to be seen, and we need to understand sometimes why the self-sabotage kicks in the way that it does, because refusing to acknowledge that and just consistently beating ourselves up and almost convincing ourselves that we're not cut out for transformation and we just can't be disciplined, like we just can't do it and we've got no willpower, and then we blame our partner, like he's brought a takeaway home or a bottle of wine and he's sabotaging me and the people in work, and it's like, no, sorry, all of that has got to go. And we've got to acknowledge where we're at, we've got to acknowledge the story so far, and then we've got to get clear on what it's going to take to help us step forward. And a massive part of that is emotional regulation. And like, you'll know the drill here, ladies. It is the end of the evening. It's of a weekend when we finally allow ourselves to breathe or relax because guess what? Like the job has been really strenuous this week, or the kids have just been so overstimulating, or the house is completely up the wall and I have no capacity to even take a moment for myself. And so I just need that quick fix, that quick sense of relief. And I'll talk to you about what that cycle is really quickly. So when we go and we reach for the sweets or the chocolate or the ice cream or the crisps or whatever your thing is, okay, the glass of wine, it's not the food in itself that we need, but we want that reward, like this dopamine reward system. So I'll give you the example, okay? How many of you have been starving or been thinking about, I can't wait to get to 6 o'clock tonight or 7 o'clock tonight or whatever it might be, to just get that glass of wine or to have that piece of chocolate, okay? As soon as I want you to do this, I want you to think about this next time that it happens for you, because it'll, even if you're someone who's in maintenance phase and you're very disciplined at this point, you'll still notice this, okay? When you go to grab the wine out of the cupboard, notice how your senses already start to elevate and that excitement and that dopamine starts to kick in. We can feel good about getting the reward before it even touches our lips, because it's not the wine itself. I'll use wine as an example. It's not the wine itself that we want. It's the act of having the wine and allowing ourselves to pour it into the glass, and it's just the whole process. Watch the next time that happens. Like, it's the same if you're hungry. Okay, we've all been there. We're hungry and angry. And then we spot food, or we hear that like there's chocolates on the desk next to us, or I don't know, whatever the scenario. The moment that we hear that, or we realise that there's food nearby, we instantly pep up. Like, so we've been hungry, or we consider it to be that way. It's not when you get the food. That's not when the dopamine kicks in. It's before that. It's the thought of getting it. And so I want you to realise how much of this is mental, because even just the thought of going to the cupboard and getting the bottle of wine will start to bring on a sense of relief. So I'll hear this from women all of the time, like, I need a glass of wine to just relieve the stress from the day. Watch the stress start to relieve the moment you shut that bedroom door on the kids and you head downstairs to get that glass of wine. Like, the stress relief will start to kick in before you even get to the wine. And so that's just one way to even acknowledge that a lot of this is mental. But what happens in that process is we had the glass of wine, the piece of chocolate, whatever it is, and we get this reward, okay, this dopamine hit. Now, the more that we do that, the more of that certain food or alcohol or whatever it is, scroll, whatever your sense of relief is, the more of it we need to keep on top of the dopamine hit. And so this is why overeating or like overconsumption of alcohol gets out of control way too rapidly, and it feels hard for us to bring back, because it's not the food itself, it's the dopamine that we're chasing. And the more that we chase the dopamine, the more dopamine the body needs to feel the reward, if that makes sense. So emotional eating explained. And I want to like frame this without you feeling ashamed in any way, because some women I know, like, we're secret eating, we're doing it of an evening, or we are doing it in the car on the drive home, or we're doing it mindlessly, like we're standing at the kitchen counter and we are just shoveling it in because we don't know how to regulate. We don't want it to be a part of who we are. So we do it really quick, or we do it when nobody's watching, and then we just promise ourselves that, like, that's not going to happen again, but I just need that quick sense of relief. And so, like, food can often be used for comfort. Like, if we're sad, if we're feeling a bit down, sometimes if we're feeling a bit angry, it can be a reward. Like, if we've had a good day, like, well, I'm just going to get the takeaway and have the glass of wine because, like, the meeting went really well, or whatever it was that we were, looking to achieve that day. It can be relief, which I've kind of just touched on. Sometimes it can be a sense of control. Like, it can be the only thing that you feel that you've got control over is the food. And so we use it to bring us back into the driver's seat. And so when we relate this to emotions and it being an emotional problem, like, and the big hormone driver here is the stressor hormone. and I know you hear me talk a lot about this, ladies. If you followed the podcast for a while, you will have heard me talk about this before, stress and that adrenaline hormone. And I want to make clear here, stress is not always, I've had a stressful day. Like, we know what a stressful day feels like, but stress could be like your immune system struggling. You might be overtraining and under recovering. It might be that you have spent your entire day on a computer and you've not allowed yourself to move. We know that general movement helps us to regulate. It gives us that it gives us that short-term release, so it allows our cortisol and our stressor hormone to ease and relax and come down. Like, we've got to look at, for a lot of the women who are listening to this, and a lot of the women that I work with, we are under some level of stress throughout the course of the day, and so understanding how to re-regulate that is really important. But if you do find yourself emotional eating, and some of what I've said so far is like, oh, this is me. This is me. How does she know I feel seen? Like, first and foremost, like, I really want you to understand this is just, it's information. If you feel that you, and I've got a client who does this really bloody brilliantly, okay, because we've done a lot of work. We've done a lot of work on the emotional and the mental side of fitness alongside her physical transformation. And she still has periods of time where she'll have a stressful week and she'll be like, Nick, last night, wow, I just needed a pizza. I needed a dessert afterwards, and like there was nothing that was going to get in the way of that. And I knew that it didn't line up with the goals, but I needed that release. And she can play back how the day went, where she felt unstuck. And like, we're not robots, guys. We're all going to have days where we overeat slightly and we eat a little bit more than we would have liked. I say this again in inverted commas, because we all start our day, don't we, with this ideal of like how the day is going to run and how we're going to eat and how disciplined we're going to be. And, you know, it would be great if every day went to that plan, but sometimes it doesn't. And like, that's okay, because as long as what we do 80% of the time is in our best interests, that's what your body will reflect. Your body is a reflection of how you treat it, like point blank. And so what you do 80% of the time is what you will reflect. But the other 20%, you know, the pizza on a Friday night or whatever it might be for you, that's not going to show up as long as you understand how to get yourself back. And like, for this client, she's just dialed in now. She's so good at reflecting on, okay, what happened there? Like, what just happened? And getting herself back on course. She doesn't overthink. She doesn't like beat herself up about it. She doesn't go into self-destruct. She doesn't go into start again Monday. She doesn't try and hide it from me as a coach. Because again, like, some of you listening to this will have found yourself in this position where you're working with a coach, but you go off the radar when you're struggling, which is so backwards, isn't it? But it's, again, I think it's just such a common trait of us women, is that like when the going is going good, we're quite happy to report back. Like, give me the direction to keep going forwards. I've progressed. I've done all of the things. Like, we want to show up when we're doing well, but when we're struggling, we find it hard, because a lot of the time what I hear, and I know this from my own experience, I like have been there, in our minds we think, well, I certainly have thought this, we think, right, okay, I'm going to just skip check-in this week, or I'm going to skip like my touch base with my coach, and I'm going to get myself back on course, because again, referring back to the very beginning of the podcast, I know what I need to do, I just need to do it, and then I'll get back to check-in next week when I'm back on, you know, when I'm back in business. This client who I'm speaking about, and anyone who I have worked with who has had a complete transformation and who has been able to sustain it, oh my gosh, they speak up when they are struggling. Like, it's not, they don't wait to get back in business themselves. They speak up at the point of like, okay, this happened today, or this happened in the last 24 hours. I've been able to reflect on why that was the case, but I just want to put it out there. And like, we acknowledge it, and then we move on from that. It's so important that we're able to reflect and acknowledge and just notice these little patterns creeping up. Because let me tell you this, ladies, we speak about this willpower and this discipline, but let me tell you, when your emotional needs are unmet, that is when willpower will struggle most. That is when the discipline, when you feel regulated, think about a day when everything just went to plan. And yes, I imagine you'd meal prepped and you felt more organised. But again, this all helps with emotional regulation. Like, it's an ecosystem. as you may have heard me talk about before, the preparation and the planning for yourself and the being able to think ahead of time and the having an agenda for yourself, essentially, which a lot of mums, a lot of women listening, whether you're a mum or not, like, it just doesn't feel second nature for us to plan in time for ourselves in the day or in the calendar or in the week. But that in itself helps us to feel better regulated. And when we are neglecting our own needs, that is when willpower will struggle. So it's a false economy, because we organise everybody else and then we say, we'll wing it. Like, I'm just going to be really disciplined. I'm going to go to Marks and Spencer's on lunch and I'm just going to get the really low calorie meal deal, and then I'll wait till dinner. And like, we play it through in our minds, don't we? Because first thing in the morning, we can convince ourselves of anything. But if you know the patterns that show up for you, and you know that you are going to need a bit of a plan, and you are going to need to prepare ahead of time, and like, that's what's going to keep you feeling at your best, then we've got to execute on that. So let's talk through what actually helps. What is going to help you to, first of all, manage this emotional regulation so that we can support our fat loss goals. Because let's be honest, ladies, we don't just want to drop a couple of pounds. We want to feel freaking fantastic. I nearly dropped an F-bomb there, but I'm not going to do that. But we want to feel at our best. Like, thriving is so much more than, like, I've lost the weight from Christmas. We want to feel strong, fit. Like, fit is a big one. Fit is big energy. Okay, I want to be able to run after my kids and not be like puffed out. And I want to be able to, when I'm on holiday, I want to be able to get myself out of the swimming pool without using the steps and without feeling as though, like, I'm really struggling with the upper body strength. This is an example that I've spoken to a lady about recently, and she said to me, like, I cannot get myself out of the swimming pool. Like, I feel embarrassed because I have to, like, flop myself onto the side by the time I've managed to, like, really pull myself up, and I want to be able to do a press up because I can't. I've got no upper body strength. And I was like, okay, I love that goal for you, because that is a real life example of, like, of course, all of the things that come with that. If we can nail press ups and you feel fitter and more energized and everything else, can you imagine the body that's going to go alongside all of that? Yes, of course. But if this is going to be the year that we absolutely thrive, then let's get clear that we've got to be able to manage these peaks and troughs of emotional dysregulation. And like I've just said, it's going to happen to us all from time to time. There's going to be, and again, like, if you're in your 40s and your hormones are living the best life right now, which mine are once a month, and everything in between, then it's, 20% of the time, yeah, we're going to do things a little bit differently, but we've got to recognize it rather than just go, I've got no willpower, I've let myself down again, I'm falling back into old habits, I'm feeling my old habits creep back in, I'm so not made for this healthy life that everybody is talking about. And we beat ourselves up. I don't know any better way to articulate it, but we beat ourselves up internally, and it's the easiest thing to do. Like, I would challenge you not to do that. I would challenge you next time that voice comes in to just tell it to quiet down. That is the challenge, because it's easier to say, you know what, I'm a failure, this is not meant for me, sod it, I'm just going to go and eat what I want to eat. And then what happens? We wake up the next morning, we feel a bit guilty, we've had the sleep, so we're re-regulated a little bit, so we can bring ourselves back into, okay, today's going to be the day mode. And then the day gets away with us, the dysregulation kicks in, and again, there's a lot of things that can impact this, and we find ourselves in the same cycle. So let's talk about what actually helps. First of all, I want to empower you with this information, ladies, rather than it feel overwhelming, because some of you will be listening thinking, how the hell do I regulate my emotions? Like, I'm not really in control of my emotions. Well, I would argue that you are. And plugging in your fundamentals and your non-negotiable, and my ethos is that it starts with you, is a surefire way to help. You will know, you'll have heard me say this before, this is why I work out first thing in the morning. And whether that workout is just me going to the gym and getting on a treadmill and walking for 20 minutes, it positively sets me up for the day in terms of, I just feel more regulated. I'm just better able to push forward with the day ahead. Now, not everyone's able to do that, but I will have clients who'll take regular breaks from work, or we will intentionally schedule to listen to something on the commute It might be one of our community videos. It might be something specifically that I've sent over from time to time. I will send different videos, whether it's, something on mindset or something on nutrition, or like it can be anything and everything. I'm always sending things to one-to-one clients, but we're very intentional about how we regulate and how we choose to spend our energy. Like, are we spending it getting ourselves in more of a tiz, or are we helping ourselves to better regulate? Because getting out and going on that walk and spending that half an hour meal prepping and putting thought into what your evening meals are going to look like this week, and taking the time to get up off your desk and go and walk to the water cooler rather than sit there and feel burnt out, like all of this is keeping you better regulated. And I think that's the important thing to take here, is that like we want to keep on top of feeling regulated. It's not something that we want to have to like claw back. So this is all of this information. I want you to take it on as, okay, this puts me in a position now where I understand a little bit more about what's going on. I want you to focus on principles, not rules. So when we feel that we're following black and white rules, can't eat this, can't drink that, gotta do this, gotta hit that many steps, that's when we give ourselves an option to fail, because we're putting a black and white rule in place. So there's an on or there's an off. I just want you to follow principles. So the principle of 3 litres of water a day, 10,000 steps, and 8 hours sleep a night. I'll just give you 3 ballpark examples. Okay, that's a principle. We're going to aim to live our life by those principles. Some days that's not going to happen, and that's okay. But those are the principles that we're going to anchor back to. So if we have a day that is off course, that's what we're going to anchor back to. It's not rules. You haven't failed if you don't meet your 10,000 steps. That's not a failure. But if you want to transform and you know where you want to get to, it's a principle that we're going to return back to the following day. And that can spill out into your workouts and the mindset work and the nutrition and everything else. Eating enough earlier in the day. This is a big one for us ladies, particularly if you are in the second stage of your cycle, so in sort of like weeks 3 and 4, or you're in your 40s, okay, and hormones, stress response, everything has started to shift ever so slightly, that some days feels more manageable than others, but generally speaking, our cortisol production it's elevated in a way that it wasn't before. And so what that means is we sometimes can find ourselves, we wake and we're in a state of stress, even though we've had a good night's sleep, because it's normal for the body to be in a state of stress, because as part of our evolving biology, cortisol is rising. But one of the efficient ways to take your body out of stress is to eat. And this is why it's important to dial in that good, protein-rich, nutrient-dense breakfast. It doesn't have to be first thing in the morning. I don't eat at 8 o'clock every morning. I will eat earlier in the day around menstrual cycle. You may have heard me talk about this, because although it feels sometimes counterintuitive, because it can be the time of the month when we feel more bloated, and any of you who have been used to pushing that first meal back or doing intermittent fasting, or and we tell ourselves like that works for us if we skip breakfast or we push that first meal back. But any of you who've done this previously and you're now noticing that your body is starting to change, trust me, just plugging something in first thing of a morning can really help you to stay regulated for the entire rest of the day. So making sure that we eat enough early on in the day. I will have a lot of clients, first 7 days is very much sort of gaining an understanding of your, like, a typical day for you. And for a lot of clients, what we'll do is we'll spin it on its head. So your biggest meal is, you're being good for breakfast, in inverted commas, and you're trying to be good for lunch. And then maybe you hit a bit of a brick wall about 3. And then by the evening meal, like, that's when we're overeating. And then maybe we're still eating late in the night because we just didn't eat enough early on in the day to stay regulated. So as the day goes on, stress continues to rise, bandwidth continues to be overstretched. And by the end of the evening, or by 6 p.m, emotionally, we're just depleted. And honestly, that happy, buzzy energy that we would love to be able to sustain right until bedtime, like, that's well gone. Like, the battery is drained, and the only way that we're going to claw anything back is through food. And so flipping it on its head and actually removing this very old version mentality of like being good. And again, if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm saying in inverted commas, being good, which is normally, eating very little or pushing that first meal back or maybe just having the Special K and then having I saw yesterday, I went to Sainsbury's yesterday and I saw on the end of an aisle cup of soup, like just a big rack of cup of soup. And obviously we know the ends of aisles on supermarkets, they're the like the hot picks, aren't they? So supermarkets use the ends of aisles to engage customers. So they'll normally put like special offers, or maybe it'll be something they're trying to get rid of. Or, you know, in this case in January, it'll be the foods that they know people are going to stock up on, and maybe the foods that have got healthy written on the label or high protein or whatever. And it was cup of soups, and I was like, oh my gosh, is that still a thing? There will be so many women who will just get 5 of them in the basket. There's lunch 5 days this week, cup of soup and a round of bread, or maybe just a cup of soup and an apple is what I've heard in the past. It's like, wow, okay, you see that being good mentality, like being good, again, in inverted commas, is what is part of the problem, because you get into 6 p.m. and you're so out of sort because you haven't given your body the nutrition it needs to support you through the day. And so again, it's not lack of willpower, it's not lack of discipline, it's genuine, like you've met the point of exhaustion. So we need to acknowledge that. We need to understand non-food ways to decompress. Again, like finding these little habits and these little systems and like ways that we can integrate into our day that allow us to decompress, going to get the walk, listening to something, moving away from the screen, getting a drink of water that isn't related to food, which generally tends to be like the first port of call for most. Know that reducing decisions, the amount of decisions that you need to make, is a big one for helping you stay emotionally regulated, ladies, and you might not realise this. So I will often preach about rinse and repeat meals, breakfasts and lunches. It doesn't have to be the exact same thing, but you know, even if you think of just 5 meals, 5 breakfasts and 5 lunches, that every week you have the same thing on a Monday, the same thing on a Tuesday, like it's rinse and repeat, but it removes decision fatigue. And this can be like more than you realise, very draining, especially if you're battling in your mind between what you really want to eat and what you think you should eat because you're on a diet. That in itself, that's a battle. That is a drain on your energy, like even having to make those decisions and stand in the Pret or the Marks and Spencers or wherever you've gone for lunch, and you're battling with yourself versus, should I just get the healthy option and get the low calorie option, and remove the decision fatigue. Know what you're going to be eating, have a plan for yourself, rinse and repeat. If you are serious about transformation, this is one of the best pieces of advice that I can give you, is just get comfortable. Like, figure out what you enjoy. Make sure it's got 30 to 50 grams of protein. Make sure we've got some micronutrients in there, whether it's from fruits or vegetables. And be willing to rinse and repeat those meals, because it takes the pressure away from always having to think about what I'm going to eat next. So it's important to acknowledge at this point that supporting yourself or seeking support from a coach or a community, and actually having some structure for yourself, again, not something that we always consider to be a necessity. We feel that it's quite selfish to consider having structure for ourselves, but the structure and the support really alleviates the emotional load. And when we are more emotionally in check, and we think about all of those big emotions, and we think about the big emotions that we would love to be feeling more of the time, and we think about those emotions that maybe we're feeling more of the time than we would like to, whether it's anxiety or feeling down, or, you know, just feeling like we're overstretched or we're overstimulated, or our bandwidth is just at breaking point. Like, we think about those big emotions. If we could lean into more of the good energy and the gratitude and we have to have structure and support to set us up for that. It's not going to happen by chance. It's not going to happen by chance. It's not going to happen because our willpower was just a little better on that day. We have to set ourselves up for that. And so if you've not yet reached out to a coach, or even to a friend, or even to your partner, or maybe the community and work, like wherever you know that you will get that genuine support. And again, I've said this on every podcast the last couple of weeks. If you don't have that place, come and join us inside of Thriving Women. Like, what are you waiting for? I am genuinely inviting you to come and join us, ladies. I spent way too long trying to do it on my own, and I see women all of the time just trying to do it on their own, and we feel that it's the only way. And like, we're in this society now where it's not normalized to lift each other up and to support each other. But like, we're not supposed to be going through this alone, because it is an emotional roller coaster, and a lot of the time it is a struggle. And one minute you are flying high and the next minute life happens, and like, we need support. We need support to be able to manage that. But if we're going to truly thrive, we also need to have structure. And it's really important, because you will feel so much more emotionally regulated, and you will find the process of fat loss, so much easier. And I want you to think about this like cycle of when the body fat starts to slip away and you start to feel better and you're less bloated and you've got more of a spring in your step and more energy, the emotional regulation comes with that. And so everything knocks onto everything. And that's how we build momentum. But it starts with our emotional regulation. And so if we're consistently beating ourselves up, or we're consistently feeling like we need to white knuckle and we need to just do the most harsh, restrictive thing first to get us off the ground running, or kickstart us, or whatever we tell ourselves, then we're always going to find ourselves in this emotional pickle. That is so not the line that I wanted to close this podcast on. But we will find ourselves in a pickle. We will find ourselves struggling emotionally to just stay the course, and we won't enjoy the best part of transforming, which is the process. Let me tell you this, ladies, life is not all sunshine and rainbows, but thank goodness that it's not, because the process is that's where you learn. Like, this is where we get to pick ourselves back up, and we build resilience, and we build relationships, and we understand what works, and we're able to give ourselves grace. And like, the journey is, honestly, it's the most, and any woman that I've worked with, or any of you listeners who've gone through a big transformation yourself, you will know that the journey has been the most rewarding thing that you could have done, because that's where you have built the character and the resilience, and you've built this evolved, transformed version of yourself. And so I will leave you with a question to ask yourself this week, ladies. If you could change one thing, stop beating yourself up about one thing this week, if you could do one thing differently, maybe, what would it be? What would it be, and what is stopping you from putting that into place? And if you know that there is one significant change that you could make, and maybe it feels like the hard thing, maybe it feels like discipline, I would challenge you to put that into place this week. Make it happen. And keep me posted how you get on the other side. And if fat loss is your goal, and you are struggling to put structure in place, and you are struggling to just understand how to even get the ball rolling, reach out, drop me an email, drop me a DM, reach out to me on Instagram, and I'll be more than happy to have a chat. I hope this episode has been thought-provoking and it's been helpful. And anything else that you'd love to hear more of, or anything that you've enjoyed listening to so far, I really appreciate all of your feedback, all of your shares on the podcast, and all of your messages. And I will catch you all next week.